I found out my wife of 6 years was an escort, and she still had clients while married to me. Now she's begging me to take her back. They say love blinds you, but I never knew it could also bury you alive. My name is Marcus Reed, and for 6 years, I thought I was married to the love of my life, Vanessa. She was everything a man could ask for, graceful, kind, intelligent. We met at a charity gala in Dallas. She said she worked in interior design. I believed her. Because love makes you believe even the silence between words. But the day I found out who she really was, everything inside me died. It was a cold Thursday morning in November. I'd been in Houston for a client presentation. I came home early, flowers in hand, planning to surprise her before our anniversary trip. But the surprise was mine. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text lit the screen. Same hotel, same time. Bring the black dress. The bonus is worth it. I froze. My mind told me to ignore it. My heart refused. I opened her messages. There were dozens of them, men's names, payment confirmations, hotel bookings. My wife wasn't just an escort before we married. She never stopped. I stood there, phone trembling in my hand, watching the woman I built my world around crumble into a stranger. That was the day love died, and something darker was born. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in my car across from our house, watching the light under our bedroom window flicker. At dawn, I drove to her boutique office, the interior design firm she claimed to manage. But the signboard was dusty, the glass door locked, and the mailbox overflowing with unpaid bills. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not until I knew everything. The next day, I found a small silver key in her purse while she was in the shower. It had a hotel logo engraved on it, the Lincoln Grand, room 417. I didn't need to ask questions. That evening, I went there. The receptionist recognized her instantly. Mrs. Reed, right? She said she'd be up in 10 minutes. My stomach twisted. I waited in my car until a black Mercedes pulled in. A man in his 50s stepped out, expensive suit, cheap morals. He took the elevator to the 4th floor. I followed. When the door of 417 opened, I saw my wife. In lingerie, laughing softly, pouring him wine. I didn't enter. I didn't make a scene. I simply turned around, walked out of that hotel, and in that moment, Marcus Reed, the loving husband, died. And someone else, colder, quieter, took his place. I knew confronting her would only give her excuses. So I did something smarter. I became a ghost. While she slept, I backed up her phone. Every message, every photo, every booking. I hired a private investigator in Houston. A retired FBI tech analyst named Elliot. Within a week, he'd traced her clients. Some were politicians, real estate moguls, even one of my own business associates. It was filth dressed in designer suits. Elliot handed me a flash drive. You sure you want this, Marcus? Once you see what's inside, there's no going back. I nodded. That night, I watched the videos, the messages, the double life she built while lying beside me every night. She wasn't just meeting clients. She was managing other women, setting up appointments under her fake design company. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. Because I realized something, Vanessa was addicted. Not to money, but to control. And the only way to destroy someone addicted to control, is to let them lose it completely. That was the night I began planning her downfall, one that wouldn't involve violence, shouting, or revenge in the usual sense. No. I would take away everything she valued most. Power, reputation, and her illusion of being untouchable. I started with patience. Real revenge requires timing. I acted like nothing was wrong. Smiled at breakfast. Kissed her cheek. Asked about her design meetings. But behind that calm face, I was rebuilding my world without her. I quietly transferred all business accounts from our joint access to a private trust. Sold off assets she didn't know existed. And every time she asked for more investment capital, I gave it. Recording every transaction. Meanwhile, I started documenting her double life in an encrypted folder, emails, photos, receipts, everything the law would need when the time came. Then came phase 2, exposure. I created a fake client profile under the alias, Mr. Howard. A wealthy investor interested in her services. I booked her, paid the deposit, and set the location, the same Lincoln Grand Hotel. But instead of meeting her there, I sent Elliot, who installed a hidden camera in the suite. I wanted evidence that couldn't be denied, not just to destroy her reputation, but to protect myself legally. The moment the footage was confirmed, I didn't rush to confront her. I simply stared at her across dinner that night, watching her laugh, her eyes sparkling with lies. And all I could think was, you have no idea what's coming. The night I decided to confront her, it was raining, poetic, almost cinematic. She came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. I was sitting on the couch, the lights dimmed, her phone on the table beside me. "Marcus," she said softly, "why are you up?" I didn't answer. I played the video. Her face drained of color. Where did you get that?" she stammered. "I could ask you the same," I said calmly. "How long, Vanessa? Since before the wedding? Or just when I stopped being enough?" Tears welled up, but I'd seen this act before. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Then what is it?" I asked. "A business meeting? A side hustle?" She fell to her knees, sobbing, grabbing my hands. "Please, Marcus." I was scared. I didn't know how to stop. Those men, they threatened me. I wanted to believe her, God, I wanted to. But the evidence said otherwise. I stood up, pulled my hands away, and said quietly, "Vanessa, you've destroyed something you can't rebuild." Then I walked out, leaving her on the floor, crying, calling my name into the storm. But I wasn't done. This wasn't the end. It was only the first act. Because the world still saw her as Mrs. Reed, the successful designer, the perfect wife. And I was going to make sure the world knew who she really was, without saying a single word. Revenge, I learned, is not a scream, it's weather. A slow, invisible pressure that fractures things from the inside out. I began by planting seeds, small and precise. Anonymous tips to the hotel management about unauthorized business activity. A discreet call to the Design Association suggesting Vanessa's firm might be a front. A carefully worded email to one of her high-profile clients, a developer in Austin, hinting that their recent consultations might not be strictly professional. I never threatened. I never lied. I simply asked questions that made others ask their own. Humans are gossip engines, give them a cog and they'll run with it. Vanessa remained blissfully unaware. She strutted through charity galas and networking breakfasts, the same smile plastered on like stage makeup. But behind her, like a shadow, rumors grew teeth. Her bookings started to thin. A brief client cancelled, then another. Her boutique's Instagram engagement dipped, not overnight, but steadily, like a plant starved of water. At home, she was restless. She checked her phone with a tremor she tried to hide. Once, she looked at me with suspicion and asked, "Are you doing something?" I only smiled. "Just trying to save our life," I said. She believed me. For now. But storms don't announce themselves. They simply arrive. And I had no intention of warning her. Elliot handed me a list that felt like a Bible of betrayals, names, dates, locations, payment logs. Some I expected, the Austin developer, a cosmetics CEO. Others were explosive, a councilman from my own city, a longtime partner of my architecture firm. When one of those names belonged to Jacob Marlowe, the man who'd financed my first building project, my stomach nodded. Jacob had been a mentor, a man who introduced me to clients and cut checks when banks said no. If he was on that list, everything I'd built could crumble. I had options: expose them all in a public dossier, bring Vanessa down in a blaze. But the smarter move was to use their fear against them. I sent an anonymous packet to Jacob's office, a plain envelope with one line typed inside: "We have your receipts. If they leak, your projects, your marriage, your contracts, gone." No sender. No signature. Jacob did what predators do when cornered: he paid. He hired lawyers. He called late-night meetings with others on the list. I watched as men who once seemed invincible shuffled papers and whispered promises. Vanessa noticed the shift. She complained about being ghosted by her usual circle. She begged me to reach out to Jacob, to fix this. She didn't know I had already spoken to him. Not to fix things, but to confirm that fear was a lever I could pull. Fear, it turned out, had a price. And someone was paying it, willingly. Charity galas are theater at its most deceitful: smiles, crystal glasses, applause for hands that stab in the dark. Vanessa loved them. She thrived under spotlight chandeliers. So I chose one for my next move. I bought 2 tickets to the Houston Women's Alliance Gala, the same event where we'd first met years ago. Vanessa danced through the room in a gown that glittered like truth being hidden. Cameras flashed. I sat at a table near the dais and watched her preen. Between courses, the host announced a surprise recognition for prominent community members. I felt my throat go dry. The envelope opened. A projection screen lit up. Photos slid across it, tasteful at first: awards, ribbon cuttings. Then, with the precision of a scalpel, it switched. Hotel receipts. Message threads. Familiar hotel logos. Faces cropped into stills. The room murmured, then gasped. Vanessa's smile didn't fall, not immediately. But when the slide finally stopped on the hotel key engraved with the Lincoln Grand, her hands trembled. She mouthed something at me: "What did you do?" I stood. Applause thundered in my ears, but it was different now, a hollow sound. I walked out before anyone could stop me. Behind me, the night collapsed into whispered phone calls and stunned faces. Outside, rain slicked the pavement. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read: "You're playing with fire, Marcus. They won't go quietly." I looked up at the dark sky. Fire, I thought, burns fast. I preferred the cold. They didn't go quietly. Retaliation came not as a roar but a sharpened whisper. My architectural firm's insurance was audited. An anonymous complaint about conflict of interest landed a week later, freezing one of our major accounts. Jacob threatened a lawsuit. Vanessa's boutique was vandalized. Paint and slashed mannequins, message sprayed on the wall: "Tramp." The note wasn't elegant, but it was effective. I expected attacks on her ego, I didn't expect them on me. A local blogger published a smear piece linking my firm to the same circles Vanessa ran in. My inbox swelled with hostile messages and cautious clients asking for reassurances. I could feel my world wobble. But I had planned for this. Every attack I anticipated, catalogued, and built counters for. I produced contracts proving our firm's ethical walls. I released a statement about zero tolerance for illicit activity, carefully worded to denounce without naming. I hired a crisis PR, someone who spoke in cool metaphors and airtight sentences. At home, Vanessa watched the fallout with something like panic and shame. For the first time since I'd found the messages, she apologized without theatrics. I didn't think about what it would do to you, she said. I studied her in the dim kitchen. Her confession sounded hollow, or maybe it was the house, still echoing the gala. Either way, revenge was no longer about exposing her. It was about dismantling the ecosystem that let her be untouchable. My move was ready. But to make it irreversible, I needed one final piece. The final piece was a file I'd kept hidden, a ledger Vanessa had never backed up, a meticulous accounting of clients, dates, and deposits. Elliot had found it cached on a cloud account she assumed was private. With that, I could destroy her professionally. But I chose something cleaner, colder, and public. I reached out to a journalist I trusted, not for scandal, but for truth. I arranged an exclusive, an investigative piece tying her operation to a larger human trafficking network that used legitimate businesses as fronts. I didn't fabricate a thing. I let the evidence speak. I wanted the story to be about accountability, not vendetta. Instead of leaking the ledger, we offered it to a non-profit advocate fighting exploitation. They didn't need my spectacle, they needed the names to rescue women still trapped in the web. Jacob and others certainly wouldn't like being implicated, but I was done hiding behind personal revenge. This was bigger. 2 days before publication, Vanessa begged me to stop. "You're ruining everything," she whispered, eyes raw. "Please. Think of our life." I folded my arms, feeling the ledger like a coal in my pocket. "This isn't about you anymore," I said. "It's about the women you used and the men you enabled." She stared at me, eyes glassy, and for the first time I saw genuine fear, not for her reputation, but for something deeper. The journalist called the next morning. "Are you ready?" I looked at the city from my window, the skyline slightly blurred by dawn. I pressed send. Outside, a siren wailed. Inside, my chest was suddenly hollow. The auction had begun. After the piece ran, chaos spread like ink. Headlines screamed. Vanessa's boutique closed under pressure. Men scurried to lawyer up. My phone rang through the night. But the thing about ruptures is that they reveal the small, hidden things, truths people thought were safely buried. A call came from a voice I didn't expect, Lena. A name I'd seen in Vanessa's ledger, listed as one of the women supposedly independent. She asked to meet at a diner in Fort Worth. I thought it was a trap, people come with agendas. I went anyway. Lena was 28, thin as paper and quieter than her name suggested. She didn't want money. She wanted to talk. She told me how Vanessa recruited her, coached her, threatened her family when she tried to leave. The ledger wasn't just business, it was a ledger of coercion. Lena's eyes were steady when she said, "You don't know what she does when the cameras aren't rolling." I felt a swell of something like sorrow and fury. If Vanessa had been a recruiter, a handler, then the scale of what she'd done was monstrous. This was no mere marital betrayal, it was harm that spread. Lena slid an envelope across the table, motel receipts, phone records, a short audio clip of Vanessa giving orders. I pocketed it without a word. Outside, a storm gathered. Inside, Lena whispered, "There's someone else who needs to talk. He's dangerous." Her last word hung in the diner air like a bullet. Vanessa's denials became more fragile, a house of glass quivering under an unseen hand. She stopped calling me a villain and started calling me a savior, as if rebranding could fix what she'd broken. "Marcus, it's not what you think," she would say, softer each time, like rehearsing for a different ending. Her mother called me once, voice wavering, begging for mercy. Her mother's faith in Vanessa was a thing I respected once. Now it was a ploy for forgiveness she didn't deserve. I told her, gently, that truth has a weight and I could not pretend otherwise. Meanwhile, legal teams circled. Vanessa's lawyer threatened defamation suits but had little to work with, the evidence was thorough. Still, someone powerful was desperate. My office received a subpoena alleging I had tampered with evidence. I laughed, and then tightened my jaw. Because the denial was a tactic. If you can make someone doubt the evidence, you can buy time. And time is currency for people who profit from secrets. I had to cut that currency short. That night, Vanessa left a note on my pillow, please. For 6 years, we built this life. Don't throw it away. I folded the paper and did something I hadn't done since the first discovery, I cried. Not for her, but for the women in Lena's envelope, the ones whose lives Vanessa had used like props. When I wiped my face, there was a new resolve inside me. Denial would not stand. Not this time. Jacob Marlowe had once been my mentor. Now he was a man who would do anything to protect his investments. When his legal cavalry stalled our countersuit, I realized I needed allies who hadn't been seduced by money. So I went to an old friend, Detective Olivia Price, someone who taught me the value of patience and evidence before I ever held a blueprint. Olivia listened without flinching as I laid out everything, the ledger, Lena's receipts, the hotel footage. She didn't ask why I was involved beyond my marriage, she merely said, this sounds like a network. If it is, we need to treat it like one. We met with a federal task force quietly interested in human trafficking. They couldn't act on gossip, but they could act on cooperation. I handed over everything I had, not to ruin my wife, but to free women still trapped in the machinery she'd helped power. In exchange, they promised discretion. For now. They also wanted one more thing. Vanessa's testimony. If she cooperated, charges could be mitigated for those who came forward. If she refused, the law had ways of summoning truth. When I told Vanessa that night, she flinched. You'd hand me over, she demanded. Her voice was small for the first time. I'm not handing you over, I said. I'm handing over the truth. Her eyes glittered with a mixture of horror and relief. Do it then, she whispered. Make them understand. But the task force had its own surprise. The next morning, Detective Olivia called, we have a name, someone who's been laundering money for them. He's scheduled to meet a client in New York tomorrow. The net was tightening. And someone else had noticed the thread. The next move came from a man I had never seen, a voice that arrived via a text message with a picture attached, an old photo of me, hand in hand with Jacob at a ribbon cutting. The message read, stop what you're doing, or we expose the Reed-Jacob connection. You'll lose more than Vanessa. Blackmail. A crude attempt to scare me into silence. The sender was anonymous, but the threat was clear, use leverage and people fold. I forwarded the message to Olivia. She didn't flinch. This is small time, she said. We'll trace it. We traced it quickly, to a burner phone purchased in a parking garage 2 blocks from Vanessa's boutique. The man who'd used it was not Jacob, not a politician, he was someone closer to Vanessa than she let on, Eddie, her former manager, the one who'd been quietly erased from her social feed. Eddie had a reputation for petty extortion, and when confronted, he crumbled. But Eddie's confession came with a twist. He was a corner man, he said, for someone much bigger, a fixer who had clients up and down the East Coast. Eddie offered evidence in exchange for immunity. He named a location, a penthouse in Manhattan. He promised a meeting where a wire transfer would change hands. Olivia looked at me across the table, eyes hard. We can take him down, she said. But you need to be ready for how high this goes. I realized then that every thread pulled revealed another, and the tapestry was uglier than I'd imagined. The web spanned cities, reputations, and men who thought themselves untouchable. And now, they were watching me. Manhattan smelled of electricity and possibility, and the penthouse smelled of arrogance. We flew to New York under the radar, a small team with badges tucked into suit jackets. The plan was surgical, let the fixer meet who he thought were buyers, then move in. No theatrics. No leaks. I stood in the shadows, a ghost at the edge of a skyline I'd once admired from afar. The fixer arrived with a briefcase, swaggering like a man who'd never lost. A woman in sunglasses, his so-called associate, handed over a small envelope. The exchange was subtle, almost intimate. When Olivia signaled, the room filled with badges and the fixer's confidence collapsed into stunned silence. They led him out in cuffs. The fixer had been laundering payments for years, they said. Payments that lined pockets and destroyed lives. My chest felt oddly light and heavy at the same time. Light because we'd struck a real blow, heavy because every victory carried a cost. Back at the hotel, my phone buzzed. Vanessa had sent a voice note, "They took Eddie. They'll come for you now. You should run." I didn't run. Instead, I listened to the clip from Lena again, Vanessa's voice, giving cold, businesslike instructions. My hands tightened into fists I didn't recognize. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, I tasted iron on my tongue, fear, or maybe resolve. The net was closing. So was the day I would decide whether mercy had any place left in what I was building. 2 days after the Manhattan sting, the story exploded nationwide. News anchors called it Operation Glass Veil. Dozens of arrests. Politicians, CEOs, socialites, people who'd built fortunes on illusion. Buried in the reports was one familiar name, Vanessa Reed. Not as a victim, not even as a ringleader, but as a key cooperating witness. Olivia called me before it hit the papers. She flipped, she said quietly. She's giving testimony against the network. I didn't know whether to feel betrayed again or strangely relieved. For years, Vanessa used control as her weapon, now the system controlled her. The world she built on secrecy was burning, and she was finally standing in the ashes. My phone buzzed that night. A message from her. I told them everything. About the clients, the money, even about you. I'm sorry, Marcus. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wondered if that apology came from guilt, or strategy. Still, something in me shifted. For the first time, revenge didn't feel like victory anymore. It felt heavy. But fate wasn't done yet. Because the next morning, I got another call, from Lena. Her voice shook. They're coming after the witnesses, Marcus. One girl's missing already. Just when I thought the story was ending. The real war began. Her name was Trina. 19. One of the girls Vanessa had once managed. She'd given a statement to the task force, and then vanished. No forced entry, no struggle, just gone. Olivia's unit was scrambling, but someone inside the operation was leaking intel. That much was clear. I sat in my car outside Vanessa's old boutique, the broken windows now boarded up, wondering how deep this rot went. Then my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. A distorted male voice. You think you're saving people, Reed? You're just stirring the hornet's nest. Stop now, or the next one missing will have your name attached. I froze. For the first time in months, I felt real fear, not for myself, but for the innocent women still tangled in this web. That night, I went to Vanessa. She was under protective custody, thinner, quieter, her confidence stripped away. When she saw me, she burst into tears. Marcus, they'll kill me if I talk again. I looked at her, the woman who once broke me. Then talk louder, I said. Make it impossible for them to silence you. She nodded weakly. It was strange, standing there, the betrayer and the betrayed, united by the same fear. As I left, Olivia called, we found Trina's phone in a dumpster behind a motel in Austin. My chest tightened. That motel name again, the Lincoln Grand. I drove to Austin before dawn, my headlights slicing through the fog like a confession through silence. The Lincoln Grand loomed ahead, the same place where I'd first discovered Vanessa's betrayal. Fate had brought me full circle. Police tape fluttered in the cold wind. A detective recognized me inside. You shouldn't be here, Reed. The girl's gone. Only her phone and a single keycard left behind. That keycard, number 417. The same room. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of cheap perfume and fear. Flashes from crime scene cameras lit the bed, the walls, the floor. There was blood, not much, just enough to suggest struggle. On the nightstand lay a folded piece of paper. A note. You started this fire. Now watch it burn. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need it to be. The handwriting was familiar. Jacob Marlowe. The mentor I'd once trusted had crossed the line from corruption to cruelty. As I left the motel, my reflection caught in the mirror by the hallway. I didn't recognize the man staring back, colder, quieter, but with eyes that no longer wept. Justice wasn't enough anymore. This needed truth. And to get it, I would have to walk into Jacob's world one last time. Jacob's estate sat on the outskirts of Dallas, a mansion of glass and marble, as fragile as the ego that built it. When I arrived, his assistant tried to turn me away. I didn't raise my voice. I simply showed him a photo, the note from the motel. Minutes later, I was inside. Jacob looked older, like guilt had finally learned how to age him. Marcus, he sighed. You shouldn't have come. Neither should Trina, I said coldly. His eyes flickered. Just enough to confirm the truth. I told him what I knew, about the trafficking, the laundering, the missing girl, the threats. He didn't deny it. He only said, you have no idea who you're fighting. I was never the king, only the knight. That's when he slid a USB drive across the desk. Everything you want is on here. But once you open it, you can't go back. I took it. Before leaving, I asked him one last question. Why did you protect her for so long? Jacob stared out the window. Because she was better at hiding monsters than facing them. His words haunted me all night. When I plugged in the USB later, it wasn't just files. It was names, transactions, and one shocking revelation. Vanessa wasn't just part of the network. She'd built it. The files painted a story darker than betrayal. Vanessa wasn't coerced into escort work, she had founded the network years before meeting me. She'd started as one of them, yes, but she'd turned it into business. A company masquerading as a design firm, grooming others into silence. Her charm wasn't accidental. It was her disguise. And I, the architect, the husband, the dreamer, was the perfect cover. The shock hit me like glass to the chest. I sat in the dark, staring at the names, men who bought her loyalty, women who paid for escape. Vanessa had played every side. And now she was the government's key witness. She'd outsmarted everyone, even me, and placed herself as the only survivor in a system designed to eat its own. I wanted to hate her. But deep down, I also pitied her. Because no matter how high she climbed, her empire was built on lies. And lies always collapse under their own weight. So I made a choice. Instead of destroying her, I would let her truth destroy itself. I sent the USB to the authorities anonymously, with one final note attached. Truth doesn't need vengeance. It just needs light. That night, I packed my bags, ready to disappear from the chaos. But as I closed the door, a car pulled up outside. And Vanessa stepped out, hands trembling, eyes hollow. Marcus, she whispered, they turned on me. 2 years had passed since Vanessa walked out of my life for good. I had rebuilt everything, my firm, my peace, and my name. One morning, a white envelope slid under my office door. Inside was a simple card. You once believed in me when no one else did. I'm graduating from a rehabilitation program for women. I'd like you to see what your silence created. Vanessa. I stared at it for a long while. Part of me wanted to throw it away. But another part. The part that still remembered her laughter, before all the lies, told me to go. Not for her. For closure. The event was held in a small community center in Austin. Nothing fancy. Just sincerity. When Vanessa stepped onto the stage, I barely recognized her. No heavy makeup, no glitter, no pretense. Just a woman with quiet eyes and steady hands. She began. My name is Vanessa Reed. I once lived 2 lives, one for the world, and one for my shame. I destroyed a good man because I didn't believe I deserved him. But pain taught me something: you can't heal in darkness if you keep hiding your truth. The crowd applauded softly. I sat in the back, unseen, and for the first time, I didn't feel hatred. I felt release. After the event, an organizer approached me. She asked me to give you this if you came. It was a sealed letter. I opened it in my car. Marcus. If you're reading this, it means you chose forgiveness. Not for me, but for yourself. You were my mirror. Every lie I told you showed me the truth I was running from. If I could go back, I wouldn't change what happened. Because the pain you gave me became the bridge to who I am now. Vanessa. Tears filled my eyes. Not out of love. Out of peace. That evening, I returned to the house I once built for her, now mine alone. The sunset stretched across the glass walls, golden and quiet. I walked to the drawer where her first letter still lay. The one written in guilt. Beside it, I placed this new one, written in strength. 2 versions of her story. 2 versions of mine. And as I stood there, I realized, my revenge had turned into redemption. Not for her alone. But for both of us. A year later, I received a magazine in the mail. On the cover was Vanessa, now a counselor for women escaping double lives. The headline read, "From Secrets to Strength, the woman who rebuilt herself." I smiled quietly. That was the justice. She'd become living proof that truth can heal what deceit destroys. As for me, I met someone new, someone kind, honest, and open. The scars remained, but they no longer hurt. I once sought revenge to make her feel my pain. Instead, I found peace watching her rebuild herself from it. And that's when I finally understood. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is watching the liar become honest. Thanks for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and share my videos. Thank you.